I forgot to ask you something during the show, so I'm going to ask you now, technically after the show, but I'm going to splice it into the beginning of the show.
Make it happen.
Which you mentioned earlier that you had this name, The Studio, at one point, and somehow that became the Pinery Coffee Company. Where did the name The Pinery come from?
Yeah, good point. Studio and Pinery don't necessarily have too much correlation. So the Pinery specifically came from this whole region used to be a gigantic pine forest. And so it really speaks to some of the more recent history of the area, where some of the industries that we still see, like paper mills and logging, have sprouted up around the area just because of its really dense natural resources. So a lot of the way that we've decorated the Pinery, the bags that we're working with Roaster, thank you Roaster, that we're designing have like photos of pine forests in Wisconsin, because that's kind of the history of the surrounding area, or the more immediate history of the surrounding area is big pine forests, which allowed for a lot of industry, which is why a lot of people ended up here.
Nice shout out there. I hope the bags look great.
They're going to be awesome.
Roaster Coffee Packaging, found online at roaster.com, has printed great-looking bags for a host of your favorite coffee companies. From small roasters to international distributors, they trust Roaster to produce their coffee packaging. But Roaster's mission, their ethos, is to help their customers tell the big stories of their small businesses. That includes those of you roasting coffee at home. If you're a home roaster wanting to share your coffee with friends, family, and your coffee community, Roaster wants to help support you too. Use the design templates on roaster.com to envision your coffee in a sleek coffee bag, classic tin can, or put your own artwork and logo on a sticker or label. You can click into Roaster's Design Lab to access bag designs already, ready for you. Roaster has tipped the scales to favor home roasters, solo entrepreneurs, and small businesses by using digital printing, which enables faster turnaround times and smaller print runs. In short, Roaster can help you, and on roaster.com, you can start with a quote and end with the perfect coffee bag to share your story. Hey there, a special shout out to all of you who support this Coffee People podcast by buying us a cup of coffee, reading the newsletter, and listening to the show. Thank you. If you want to support the creation of this show, help us stay caffeinated and our internet running, please click the Buy Us a Coffee link in this podcast's show notes. Now, on to the show.
Yeah, this is the old beer can bike. When I was out in Washington State, I was like, "Oh, I'm just a mountain biker. I'm gonna go hard." Then I had like a dumb crash, and I got freaked about the whole sport. That was like in high school. I went to college, and I was like, I don't bike. And then all of a sudden, for some reason, this guy had this bike, and I was like, I really like your bike. I want it. How much do I have to pay? And he's like, I'm not going to sell it. And so finally one night I had a 6-pack of Heineken, and I was like, I'll trade you this for your bike. And it was a terrible decision on his part, but he totally traded me this. And it's a horrible bike. Horrible. But I rode that so long and so far, and that got me back into biking. And now I have like a little cyclocross bike, and just got into bike polo, and that's been like way too fun.
I'm going to link to bike polo for people at some point. This wasn't even going to be part of the show, but now I think it will be because of that. Hey, good morning, everyone. Welcome to Season 11, Episode 7 of the Coffee People podcast, which is part of the Roast West Coast Coffee Network. and presented by Roaster Coffee Packaging. They've been just a great partner and sponsor of us for quite some time now. I'm Ryan Woldt, and this is the show where I meet and chat with roasters, baristas, green coffee importers, trip organizers, farmers, scientists, writers, artists, activists, and cafe owners. That list is ever growing. I'm always meeting new people. Today, I'm chatting with Nolan Baker. He's the co-founder and roaster at the Pinery Coffee Company in Wausau, Wisconsin. I met Nolan when I stopped into the cafe on a recent trip home. Wausau is where I'm from. I only planned on visiting that one morning, but I ended up going back because the service and the coffee were what the kids call on point. The kids say that, right? While you're listening to the podcast today, be sure to check out thepinerycoffeeco.com and at the Pinery Coffee Co. on social media. You'll find the links in this podcast's show notes wherever you're listening or in our newsletter, which you can sign up for, and I'll email you the show every Wednesday at coffeepeoplepodcast.com. Speaking of coffee, do you have a full mug in front of you? Perhaps you're getting crazy with some milk foam and a cappuccino or a latte. Me, I'm drinking an AeroPressed anaerobic honey-processed coffee from Costa Rica. Thanks to Brian from Mill City Roasters and Relative Coffee for sharing. The tasting notes are marmalade, fresh cherry, and Arnold Palmer. And I can say with an enthusiastic exuberance that the cherry flavor is on point. See what I did there? I brought it back around because I'm cool like that. And since you're also cool like that, I know that you've got your coffee ready to go, because it is time for another Coffee People conversation. This one with Nolan Baker, co-founder and roaster at the Pinery Coffee Company in Wausau, Wisconsin. Here we go. Speaking of identities, Nolan, if you wouldn't mind telling everyone your name, the name of the company you're here talking about and representing, and what you do there.
Yeah. So my name is Nolan Baker. I'm with the Pinery Coffee Company, but a lot of times we just shorten it down to the Pinery. And I'm a co-owner, barista, head janitor, roaster, all the things. All the things.
Sounds like an entrepreneur to me. Anyone who's listened to this show for a while knows that I'm from Wisconsin. I'm actually from Wausau, the town where Nolan's roastery is. It's my hometown. It's where our biggest sponsor, Roaster, is from. Great company. And I was home visiting family, and I went to this new place in town. I just say the Pinery. And I always plan to visit as many coffee shops as I can while I'm in town. I ended up going to the Pinery 4 days in a row, I think, and just enjoying that experience. It's a place that's been a coffee shop of some name and some sort for years and years and years, and has had a lot of turnover. And now these guys have come in. They've got a lot we're going to talk about. Nolan, before we get to all of that, I want to ask you a little bit about who you are. I know coffee's not the only thing you do, but did you have a first experience with coffee at some point that made you think, I don't know, this is kind of interesting, totally separate from the business, but just you in your personal life?
Definitely didn't grow up around coffee or around a coffee culture at all. But I can distinctly remember back in the little town that I grew up in, we'd go to the grocery store. I loved the coffee smell in the coffee aisle. It was back when they would have, the tubes of coffee and the grinder right there. And you would walk down that aisle, and that was like, I was so excited to go down that aisle. And I couldn't understand why, everyone wasn't just drinking this. Probably the first time that I ever did have coffee, it was a bad experience, who could ever drink this? It doesn't smell like it tastes. And then between undergrad and grad school, my sister and brother-in-law got me this lime green French press and a bag of coffee. And thankfully, they bought me a pre-ground bag of coffee, because otherwise I would have had to use like a hammer and a rock. And I started trying to make coffee, and it never tasted like it smelled. And so I went to some shops and asked some people about it and started drinking a little bit more coffee. And during that time too, I had a little extra downtime in my life. I was in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and there's a lot of awesome coffee shops there. And so I had the opportunity to just have a little bit of an education there and fall in love with some of the coffee scene up there. And so that was kind of my foray into coffee, was frustratingly not being able to chase the smell of that grocery store aisle.
A quick aside, I've actually seen past guest, good friend, supporter of the show, Chris O'Brien of Coffee Cycle Roasting, grind coffee beans on a rock with a cast iron pan at camp when we had all
Okay.
forgotten grinders. So it is possible. Before you become a roastery owner, co-owner with your partners, Daniel and Andrea Tyler, I want to make sure we shout them out right away. Can't do it without them. You had another career. You have another career. You still have another career. But what were you doing, in the time leading up to this experience?
Yeah. By training, I'm a speech language pathologist, and that's what I went to school for. We have a couple other things on the side too, but speech therapy was kind of that main focus. And started out in the hospital systems. 2020 hit and ended up moving up here to kind of step away from the hospital system a little bit. Also because there's a wonderful woman who was up here that I was chasing, so that was good. And I started doing like online teletherapy for speech therapy. And that really gave me a lot of flexibility with schedules and timing, and really gave me kind of a lot of control over the timing of my life, which was fantastic and opened me up to being able to focus on some different things during the morning times. And then I would do a lot more speech therapy in like evenings, afternoons, and such, just with the time zone differences. I traditionally practice in California now versus here in Wisconsin. And so apparently when I have time void, I find ways to fill it. And big ideas come up. And this happened to be one that I just was in love with. And it kept coming up over and over again. And so finally, when everything came together as the Pinery, it worked out really, really well.
Well, let's talk about that, how it came together. I know it was from our previous chats in person. There was some buildup where it was this idea that was out there, and then it all came together real fast, kind of at the end. Could
Yeah.
you kind of talk us through that process of, when this started to come into the world and manifesting, and then eventually, all of a sudden you're signing a lease?
Yeah. Like you had mentioned, there's more than just myself as an owner. The other majority owner couple is Daniel and Andrea Tyler, and they are big community people. And so their side of the story is they were sitting on their porch one day and they said, "Man, one day we want a place where people can come together to experience community." And that idea built into, wow, we would love to do a coffee shop. Fast forward a couple of years, we had known each other previously, but then we were chatting about that experience at a bonfire. And I tucked that nugget of information away that Daniel was interested in a coffee shop, because my journey, other than looking to chase that flavor of coffee, I had since back in maybe 2021, 2022, started a little coffee group just called Espresso Tuesdays. And we would obnoxiously go around to different coffee shops in the area, or we drive a little bit to find a new one. At the start out, we would just taste espresso, and we would then go home and try and make the espresso like that. And then we'd taste the next espresso the next week. And it was community and connection and coffee and espresso. And we started realizing that we were talking about not only the espresso, but how the espresso was served. And then we were talking about the espresso and how it was served in our interaction at the counter. And then we were talking about the espresso, how it was served, the interaction at the counter, the price of the menu, the layout of the menu, how the seating was. We just started boiling over into ideas of a coffee shop. For me, it also boiled into standard operating procedures and what is the price per cup and how many cups would have to be sold in order to share this experience with people the next day. So we didn't go out of business the first day that we were open. And my friend and I were really kind of the core parts of that little Espresso Tuesday. We built out an operating plan. We built out kind of what we wanted to do. We built out a menu, and we made some offers and looked around, and nothing came to fruition. Right in that first part, we had it all ready to go. The idea behind that was to call it Studio Coffee for whatever reason. And so that was all in the works and ready to go. And it just kept not coming up. And then fast forward a little bit, the location that we're in currently came available. And I sent it to the now growing coffee group for Espresso Tuesday. And we weren't all on the same page to execute on that one. So I sent it to Daniel, and he said, "Oh, this looks great." And the next message I got from him was, "I've got a verbal contract." And then the next message I got from him was, "I'm going to do it, but only if you can join." And so that's how we kind of like collided. And it did go fast. But the nice thing was we had a lot of the groundwork already figured out with like those Espresso Tuesday meetings. And then just kind of pouring ourselves into meeting other people in the space. Jen from Clean Slate Coffee was amazing. She really kind of just opened her books and let us in and understanding more of what was to be expected for cafes. I would text her like these insanely long messages of like, "I don't know if this is going to happen. What's happening?" And she'd say, "It's all right." And just really a calming, super calming presence.
I'd point out that Clean Slate is another coffee shop and kind of on the other side of town, but also,
Yep.
I mean, technically a competitor. I mean, you're not like on the same block or anything, but smaller community, mid-sized community.
Yeah.
Every coffee shop counts, right? And so the fact that someone like that was willing to say, "Yeah, if you think you're coming in and I want you to succeed in this industry," is a fairly generous thing to do.
Yeah. The other the other amazing person who we really interacted with was Ivan from Condor Coffee, which is a roastery out here in Wausau. And Ivan was kind enough to bring us samples, talk to us about the roasting process, some of his procedures, and it was fantastic. Just every door we came to, people would open up to some extent and share what they had, and it was really incredible. So we did some legwork, but people shared their legwork with us, which is really, if we have any modicum of success, it's because people were willing to share.
You mentioned Condor Coffee, a roastery, doing things in I believe, a more traditional way. I haven't seen them working, but a traditional roaster. You decided to add roasting to the Pinery Coffee Company instead of just starting with a coffee company and growing from there. You decided to include that as part of it, specifically using a Bellwether Series 2, I believe. Bellwether being an electric roaster that is kind of all internal, so it prevents the need for certain exhausts and other extra health codey things. Why decide to add the roasting, and how did the Bellwether get you to where you wanted it to go?
I think there's like a heart side of that answer, and then there's also a logistics side of that answer. So I can go either way that you want me to go.
I like the hard side personally. I mean, opening a small business of any kind, but a coffee in particular, it's kind of like people who are having a baby. They see other people doing it and they go, "Oh, that looks really hard." And then they go, "But we'll do it better. We'll do it differently. It'll be different for us."
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think that's the same as opening a cafe. So let's go there. Why add this extra whole endeavor of roasting to the coffee concept, and where did it go from there?
yeah. The heart side of it is just being able to get back to that idea of chasing that thing that you hope to taste in the grocery store aisle when you're 5, and then having the ability to bring in stories from all around the world through different beans from different farmers from different areas. We're able to bring people out of the glum of a winter day by chatting with them about Brazil, or mentioning that this is an Ethiopia coffee that we're looking at, or we're working with David from Panama who's selling us direct trade coffee, and that's in the works. And it's such a bright spot to bring the whole world into Wausau, instead of a lot of times when you're up north, it feels like you're kind of secluded. But you can get a bean in that maybe you had an idea of how it should taste, and just based on some of the notes that were suggested. And then if it doesn't pan out within that first roast, you can adjust it yourself versus having to wait for your stock to go out and selling a coffee that maybe you're not super proud of because you're aligned with a different roaster. You have all the flexibility to change that roast, to change that profile. We can be really, really flexible, and also start training in Wausau on, hey, you like coffee? Can we take you to the next level? And it's a stripped down way of doing roasting, because you're right there in it, and you can watch it and you can see it, and it doesn't have to be someone off in a different place. It's right there. You can bring kids up to touch the glass while it's being roasted. It looks like a little washing machine in there. And so people who may never have had the opportunity to interact with coffee roasting on such an intimate level are able to step directly into our cafe and see something that is usually really secluded. So the Bellwether kind of brings in all those things: the flexibility, the story of the world, but then the ability to take out of seclusion something that is so cool and so key to the coffee industry that we just never get to experience.
And I would point out, when you walk into your space, you open the door and you take a left, and the Bellwether is there, maybe 6 feet away. You can see it through the front window if you're looking for it. And unlike a traditional roasting machine, one of the advantages of the Bellwether is that it can be in your space without it becoming a manufacturing space. It's a manufacturing machine, but it's not requiring a lot of the same oversight that a manufacturing facility would have. Um, the the idea that kids can look at it wasn't something I'd consider. That's very cool. But like the way your passion was sparked as a kid in the grocery store, some other kid's passion for coffee or for how machines work, could be
Mm.
stoked simply by viewing this. There's a lot of different ways to do that. We've talked a little bit about community and how that's part of the origin story of what you're doing and creating this welcoming space. Every month you guys do a donation to a different cause in the greater area, and it's the quote that I saw when I was reading about that was that it's based on the good that they do for the community, and your tagline is there's a little hope in every cup. What have you found, maybe how have your expectations of what would happen versus the reality of having been in business for a while now, of how the space does that for the community? What is the role of your coffee shop in the downtown of a mid-sized community in the Midwest?
Mm. Yeah, I think there's a lot in that one. In that one too.
That's what I do here. I ask these big questions, and then I put all the pressure on you.
The little hope in every cup is such an awesome tagline, and the goal of it was just to always make sure that we were being accountable to give back to the community and to support different places that are doing good in our community. It's so often that we're just inundated with the negative, and so we want to highlight the positive. And so that one's been really fun. So that anytime that you come to the Pinery, a portion of what you're buying is going back to the cause of the month. Things that we didn't quite see coming up when we chose and committed to that was, not everyone aligns with every ideal that every non-for-profit has. And, without going into any weeds whatsoever, we will sometimes have people who choose not to come to us throughout the year because of a non-for-profit that we've chosen to give to. That was an unexpected kind of pushback, and we have given to kind of the whole range of non-for-profits, and the idea of for the good that they do in the community is really important to us. So all of our baristas are trained to, if someone asks, why did we choose this cause of the month, for the good that they're doing in the community. So that's been really surprising.
Well, when you start off with the anti-puppy campaign, Nolan, I mean, people are going to get upset, right? That's just how that works.
I'm a cat guy, so I mean, you got to start there. Yeah, anti-puppy campaign was a poor choice. I'm not going to lie. The beautiful thing has been kind of just raising awareness for different great organizations. Big Brothers Big Sisters was a cause of the month, and it was great hearing the stories of littles and bigs and how they connected and how they interacted and some of the really life-changing things that happened. And whenever we have a cause of the month, we try and push them up on our socials. And so during, I think, June, we had Big Brothers Big Sisters, and so that was amazing to showcase some bigs and littles interacting, and whether or not anyone from that company chooses to come to the Pinery, we feel like we're able to be a platform to help them to spread the good that they're doing in our community.
Sure. And then the second part of that question was kind of what you have found your role to be. I mean, and I asked this with a little bit of selfishness as somebody who grew up in that community and didn't always have a coffee shop to go to.
I like the flair. I like the spin on that. That's good. I would say, not being native to Wausau, I sometimes feel like we might not be able to give exactly what Wausau needs. And so we really rely on people letting us know like the things that they really appreciate. So it's interesting. We put our roaster in that section right to the left of our shop. And one of the biggest pushbacks I got after we opened up our doors was, man, you took our favorite spot to watch the road. And I said, oh, but the roaster's there. And where else would we put it? And they said, I don't know, but that was my favorite spot. Maybe you might want to change it. And so, there's things that you just don't know when you come into a space. And we've been really grateful for Wausau, with being such a small community, how gracious they've been with our, some of our faults, some of our foibles, as we're kind of giving our routines, our rhythms. It's the feedback that comes to us directly that helps us grow, versus, anyone can say anything on the internet right now. And so it's helpful when someone says like, hey, I needed this tweaked on my latte that you gave me, and giving us the opportunity to make it right has been so big, versus just saying, hey, this is my one interaction with you, done, we're never going to come back here. We've been really grateful. We've had some people who we were struggling on making pour overs right at the beginning, and she wrote us, she said, hey, my pour over was a little cold. We were able to reimburse her. We were able to make her another one. And now she's one of our biggest fans. Like she's our Thursday gal. She's always in on Thursday mornings. And if she didn't have that interaction and that reciprocity, we wouldn't be able to have given her a better product and learned ourselves. So
I think that's a good a piece of commentary just generally for people that just go to coffee shops. I mean, even other entrepreneurs, sure, but or restaurants or wherever. If that is your first experience or your one experience, there's a chance it could get better if you engage in a way that isn't just, this place sucks, 1 star. It's called the Pinery, and I didn't see any pine trees there. Doesn't make any sense. Like that sort of commentary isn't really helpful. It's just commentary to be out there for no reason, as opposed to, hey, I this was my experience. I wish I could make it better. And then giving them, or this is what I wish I would have had, or this is what I thought was the problem, or vice versa, or this is what I liked. Positive things are also good in
Yeah.
reviews. I have a policy. I do reviews as I travel around the country or the world of coffee shops, but I only do good reviews. Not because
Mm,
every place is good. I just choose not to do the ones that are bad. And
mm,
I've had people ask me that, why don't you do any bad reviews? And it's like, well, there's enough people that do that. And
yeah.
maybe my experience that day wasn't representative, but if I have a really positive one or there's something I really like, I like to share that with people.
Mm,
Uh, when I was sitting outside your cafe on the front road, it is in the main street of the downtown, and there's a lot of walking traffic, a lot of people. I noticed even after a couple of days, kind of the same rhythm, the same flow of people coming in and out. You mentioned you're not native, but do you start to feel more invested in this community, or not more invested? I guess that's the wrong way to say it. But are you feeling yourself being what's the word? Kind of suctioned in. You're becoming one of them. They're letting you in because you are providing this essential component of their neighborhood.
yeah. Yeah. It is interesting, and it's fun to kind of slowly build rapport with people, and you'll go from knowing their name to knowing their order to knowing that they're going to have a surgery next week, and that, hey, we should get on the phone and give them a call. And we've had the opportunity to build some of those relationships with people, and it's humbling. A coffee is not it, it's a purchase, and people are choosing to spend money with us, and we want to give them community, not only from our donations to the cause of the month, but we want to give them community right there in the coffee shop. And we tell our baristas during training, like, it starts and ends with a smile, and community is always built at the Pinery, and a name is the first place to start building that community. And it's one of the most positive feelings is to come in the door and maybe not be noticed, but to see the baristas interacting by name with some of the customers. And it's a fun experience too. I'll jump behind the bar and I'll be making up a drink. I'll say, "Oh man, this is really cool. I love this drink." And they'll be like, "Yeah, that's because it's Davis, and Davis always gets a good drink." And they just know the community, and the community is growing in the shop. And I think offering that third space of just, this is a safe place, this is a place where we want to know you, is so important for a city this size. And um, we we try and make sure that that's what we're offering is, yes, we have exceptional coffee, but it's around community, and it's just a growing thing. So some of that, the way that we grow community in the downtown space is through collaboration drinks. We'll designate a drink and have like a coupon that goes to a different shop across the street or down the road or the children's imaginarium or across the city square and the 400 block, for all those in the know. And those collaboration drinks have been really awesome, just because it helps us to say thank you so much for spending time at the Pinery. Have you checked out Magnolia Soap? Have you checked out Forward Beverage? And just to be connecting with people that we know and trust in the downtown area, so then we can send our customers over there to experience what we've experienced through those other shops is an awesome way to build community.
Very cool. What's something that I didn't ask about that you wanted people to know? What challenges have you faced this year? Be specific with names.
Yeah, I can give phone numbers too. No. Oh man, that's such a good question. I've learned a lot as a leader. Like I feel like I've grown a lot as a leader. And again, the highlight of my year is coming in, being on the bar, and the barista knows the customer that we're interacting with better than I do. And that means that something right is happening at the Pinery. And so then, my job is to coach people and manage the systems that we're using. And one thing that I've struggled with is communication. And I can hone in this beautiful SOP, and oh my God, it's going to change everything, and we're going to have the best coffee ever, and the service is going to be so crazy. But then if I don't communicate it, and if I don't give like timelines and expectations, then what have I actually done?
We do this other show called Coffee Smarter. This is obviously the Coffee People podcast, but I think Coffee Smarter is a broad enough term that it could be something specific about how you make a cup of coffee or drink a cup of coffee or appreciate it. It could be something about the experience of coffee or running a coffee shop. I mean, there's a million different directions you could go with that. So I'm wondering if you might share with us if you have a piece of advice that you would offer to somebody trying to coffee smarter in their life.
Oh, I like that. I think I would probably come at it just because of the mindset that I'm in today as as a business owner or an entrepreneur. And I would say feedback is the most critical component that you can get. And feedback comes from patrons, it comes from team members, it comes from co-owners. And it doesn't matter if you could run laps around someone about your knowledge of origin for where this specific bean came from. Like, if it didn't come out at a temperature that they deem appropriate, then you can adjust your idea of what they need, and it can make people's experience a lot better. And so it's I think just listening for feedback and being willing to take it is a really big thing. And sometimes I think to being sure to discern it is really important. Like, if it's just a one-off thing, but if you see any sort of a repeat, then that's really something that you need to tweak and change as far as processes go. And so feedback is absolutely critical.
A skill that they don't teach you at most jobs, even when you become a manager, is how to take feedback without reacting immediately. Because a lot of times feedback is not looked at as positive, even though it could be positive. But it's hard not to, when you're so invested in something and so passionate about it, or you created it, you created this process, you created this system, this business, and someone says, yeah, but I don't have anything to do with this business. I don't do it for a living. I'm not in it every day like you, but this is what I think, and it's different. It can be easy to react in a way that maybe isn't as gracious or accepting, if in no other way than in your own head, maybe not even out loud. But being
Yeah.
able to actually process it and take it in and go, okay, well, maybe are they seeing something I'm not, because I am so much a part of this. What comes next for the Pinery Coffee Company? What comes next for Nolan Baker?
Solid questions. The two are pretty connected at this point. So each next is a little intertwined. But as far as the Pinery goes, we want to make sure that we're continuing on just a safe path of progress. One of the biggest areas that we can progress in is our roastery, and making sure that we're using the Bellwether to its fullest capacity. So we've been working with some different opportunities for wholesaling and just helping figure out how we can get that exceptional coffee to more people outside of our doors. One thing that we're working on is making sure that we're going and we're doing the exploratory process with people, giving them a sample, but also talking about, hey, this is 4 ounces of coffee, and that's going to make X in a coffee pot because this is the ratio that we use. So with that exploration, also giving training when we're helping people to explore our coffees so that they have the best experience possible. And that's a big area that I'm trying to focus on, is making sure that we're getting the word out there, but also helping to make sure that it's like the right way. because we don't want someone to have a negative experience with our product and then think that that's reflective of the Pinery in general. Sometimes it could be just because we're using a Keurig coffee reusable pod that still has your blueberry morning coffee in it. And so it tinted our Brazil negatively. And we don't want that to be the thing that you learn about the Pinery. And so we've been trying to grow that education arm on the wholesale side. And then also for the coffee shop side, we're wanting to make sure things are as smooth and efficient as possible so that we can take down any barriers that the baristas might have to interact with the customers. So the smoother, the more efficient we have things running, the more our barista is able to have a one-on-one conversation with the customer who wants to engage like that. And the smoother things are there, the less that our baristas have to worry about the processes, and the more they can focus about their own coffee education and developing new recipes and having the ability and time and cognizant abilities just to engage in coffee. We don't want to have them thinking about like, what is the process for inviting someone into our store? We just want it to be done. We want to know how to make paninis. We want to know how to make a latte, because then we can actually build and get creative and help them to like really get super jazzed about the time that they spend working at the Pinery, and can actually put in some of that thought power to their job too, versus just kind of hammering out kinks that don't need to be hammered out.
When you are out exploring and you stop at someone else's coffee shop, it looks like a pretty good coffee shop, nothing to sneeze at. What are you going to order for yourself?
Ooh. Oh, Ryan, this is so boring. I am, even in 40-degree below zero weather, I'm an iced Americano guy.
You might be the first person to say iced Americano in 300 episodes.
Oh, no.
I don't think that's boring at all. It's, most people say this is so boring. I get a drip coffee, which is what I get. But iced Americano is definitely different. Nolan, I really appreciate you taking 45 minutes with me, and appreciate what you're doing in my hometown. Exciting to see a new coffee shop, a new roastery opening up. So thank you for being here, and thank you for doing that.
Thank you so much for your time, and I cannot thank you enough for the time you spent at the coffee shop and just giving us feedback, and it was so cool having you there. So I appreciate it.
Hey everyone, this is Ryan, the host of the Coffee Smarter and Coffee People podcasts. I drink a lot of coffee and I'm always a wee bit dehydrated. Luckily, I keep my Hydro Flask water bottle nearby. I gotta say, I'm pretty stoked on this blue jug. Today it's water, but it also works great for coffee in the morning and champagne or a pint of beer at night. It keeps the hots hot and the colds cold. And despite the number of times I've dropped it, or even drop-kicked it, it never leaks. I don't do much affiliate marketing, but I do feel comfortable giving Hydro Flask bottles, the ones I have and the company generally, the thumbs up. There's a link to click in this show's podcast notes and a full review in our newsletter on roastwestcoast.com. Click it to buy your Hydro Flask bottle or tumbler, and you'll be helping support this show. You want a Hydro Flask anyway, so you may as well click our links. We appreciate it, and we appreciate you. Thanks for the support, and enjoy your new Hydro Flask. Now back to the show. So, some key takeaways from today's podcast. Check out coffeepeoplepodcast.com to find that bike polo video. It's a wild sport that, even as an everyday bike rider, I definitely don't have the balance to play. Nolan's first coffee memory is tied to the smell of the coffee aisle at the local grocery store. It drew him in. It enticed him. And decades later, it was an emotional memory that tipped the scales in favor of taking on an opportunity to open a coffee roastery, despite already having another full-time career. Between those bookends of walking the market and opening the Pinery, it was the gift of a French press that got him interested in the drinking of coffee. The coffee community of Grand Rapids, Michigan welcomed him in, offered up an opportunity to take the next step from drinking to learning and appreciating. He then focused his learning with Espresso Tuesdays, a meetup group where he and other aficionados would taste and discuss espresso shots from their local cafes. Eventually, that focus turned to the other aspects of coffee, including the environment they were drinking in, the hospitality experience, and the business side, the things that might impact the cost of their Tuesday morning shots. When the Pinery became a reality, other local coffee roasters and cafes opened their arms, books, and even doors to share their coffee knowledge, despite the fact that this was a new future competitor. According to Nolan, any success they achieve, they owe to those others in the industry being willing to share. In the building of the business, the team at the Pinery added the Bellwether Series 2 roasting machine, which allowed them to be more proactive in the sharing of stories and educating the community on the craft of coffee. Not to mention, it gave them a lot more control over the product going out and the timeline of how they could change the product going out. From there, it has been the relationship with the customer and the feedback on what they need, what works, what doesn't, that has been essential to the growth of the Pinery within the community of Wausau. Finally, that little hope in every cup effort continues. For September, the Pinery Coffee Company will be donating to the Neighbor's Place in Marathon County to help provide food and clothing to those in need. To close out today, I thank Nolan for taking time out to chat, not just for this podcast, but when I was sitting in front of his cafe. It was notable to me as a former restaurant runner how naturally he engaged with the customers passing us by and how he prioritized the needs of his employees over his own. It reminded me of the best parts of being part of the hospitality exchange. Again, check out the pinerycoffeecompany.com online. You can find that link, more key takeaways, other relevant links from today's podcast, and even see and hear what we're listening to with our coffee in this week's edition of the newsletter online at coffeepeoplepodcast.com. That's the name of our show, so hopefully it won't be too hard to remember. Thank you for listening, and if you're doing so on Apple or Spotify, please tap the follow button and give us all of those lovely stars. They really help others find us, although not as much as if you just tell a friend. So if you're trying to decide between the two, tell a friend. But you can do both. I mean, it's not that hard. Thank you to everyone who's been doing so. I'm always telling my coffee friends about Roastar Coffee Packaging, found online at roastar.com. They're our presenting sponsor, and they'll help you tell the big story of your small business or enable you to share that home-roasted coffee that turned out just right with your friends and family. And since they offer low minimums, quick turnarounds, and even have a design lab on roastar.com to help you, you know your package will look and feel great. They'll work with you to ensure that in a sea of competition, your package is the one that stands out. This show is also supported by some great coffee industry partners, including Zoombar Coffee and Tea, Steady State Roasting, Moster Coffee Company, Coffee Cycle Roasting, Maria Coffee, and Cape Horn Green Coffee Importers. Alden Hazuri at Crossings Coffee and the Hales Brothers at Hosea Coffee Source have been big supporters, especially for our Coffee Smarter efforts. You may recognize those names since they've been frequent guests on our shows. Our full city partners include Ignite Coffee Company, Ascend Coffee Roasters, Civets Roasting Machines, Me and My Uncle Coffee, Craft 42 Roasters, and Cozy Canine Coffee. This show will be back next week with a recap of our experience judging the Hosea Coffee Roasting Competition and the day we spent at Coffee Fest LA. Not to mention we'll have another great guest. Thank you for listening, for sharing this podcast, sending us your questions, and being coffee curious. This show, the Coffee People Podcast, is part of the Roast West Coast Coffee Network. This episode has been written, produced, researched, and recorded by me, Ryan Woldt. I hope this episode of the show has found you happy, healthy, and with at least a thread of sanity left, enabling you to make it through another day. Always tip your baristas, and be sure to drink good coffee. Thank you for being a little bit of a guinea pig. It's been, this is my first interview in like 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8. And so
Road tripping.
Yeah, so I was gone, and so there's always a little bit of that. And also, hopefully it wasn't noticeable, I had dental surgery this morning.
Oh,
I was like, I
really?
was not thinking about like being numb. And I said, how long will it take? And they basically said, and I literally stopped being numb about halfway through our chat. So I'm hoping it's not too noticeable. Minor thing, but it was just, hopefully it's not, I'll know if it's a problem in the edit, but it's not me.
I really want you to like just take the 3-second clip of like, this second was numbed, this second is when it came off, and this second is when it's totally done.
Yeah.
Like,
I knew it was gone because I all of a sudden could feel some pain and I couldn't
oh,
before.
oh, I'm sorry.
If you are in the early stages of your coffee journey, we want to support you. Check out the Coffee Smarter Education podcasts. Coffee Smarter is designed to enable coffee drinkers to brew a better cup of coffee at home. And Coffee Smarter Pro covers industry-specific topics for baristas, roasters, shop owners, and aspiring coffee professionals. You'll find both shows on your favorite podcast platforms or on our website at coffeesmarterpodcast.com.